I want to get into Tunisia forces fight presidential guards near the palace. And I really respect his analysis. I want to get Webster Tarpley's take on this because he's written an article that's at tarpley.net and also at Infowars.com. Tunisian WikiLeaks putsch, CIA touts Mediterranean tsunami of coups. And Tarpley and others have said that WikiLeaks is just a CIA /Israeli /British intel front, and that they would start going after financial institutions. Madsen and others said that almost a year ago. Now they are starting to do it. But then if you don't support Assange, then you set the precedent to not support the First Amendment. They set these traps. So I do support Assange not going to prison, while I do agree with our resident scholars who think it's suspicious. But Tarpley, I got to ask you, what's going on with Chris Matthews? If you haven't seen it, I'll play it. Now saying if you don't support government death panels, government health care, you are a white cracker. They're now openly invoking that whites are scum, trying to legitimize racial conflict. The Ford Foundation funding the people like Obama's pastor Wright with the white devil stuff, the Ford Foundation funding the La Reconquista movement. I mean, how do you respond to this? I mean, we need to get the people together against the big global bankers, but they want us all fighting over stupid racial stuff.
Well, Alex, these are the foundation-funded provocateurs, and the guy that you've been quoting and the one that was quoted before, right? These are people who get money from foundations to go out and say these stupid incendiary things. So, in fact, the foundations are fomenting racism and attempting to use it as a classic divide-and-conquer strategy. So you don't get a united front of the whole people against Wall Street and the zombie bankers, but you get this kind of crazy quilt of ethnicities and everybody squabbling. It's actually, this is the model that was used by the Austro-Hungarian Empire in its last phase, right, to try to promote and to foster the differentiation of the nationalities so that they would all be squabbling. But
and they do it in the name of unity, but then create the disunity, and they must be getting desperate when we learn that Rupert Murdoch was in a bidding war with the Weinsteins and won, wanting to produce Machete, Fox Television, Rupert Murdoch. That's why when a Fox writer wrote about it, they pulled the article. They don't want folks to know that they're funding this duplicitous division.
Right. We know from the solving, the cracking of the human genome back in the year 2000, when J. Craig Venter went to the White House and was received by Clinton, he officially informed Clinton that race does not exist. From a genetic point of view, there is no such thing as race. This is a complete fraud from that point of view. Now, obviously, there are racial problems, and you need to have an approach to dealing with the fact that if you're black, you have a much higher probability of being unemployed. But that's not what these foundation characters are into. They're into something quite different. I wouldn't give them any extra credence. I mean, anybody who says the last gasp of white America, it's simply ridiculous. It's simply who believes it? That's not social reality. That has nothing to do with anything. That's just a line he was given by a foundation to go out and mouth that and then collect his foundation stipend. So enough of them.
Well, that is what's going on, no doubt. Briefly, what's your take on the Tucson shooter? I mean, pharmakia, constant hallucinogens, Bush. It seems like he's a man for all seasons. They can demonize the left, the right. Now he wants the lawyer that was the Unabomber's lawyer. We know Kaczynski was involved in MK Ultra. That's the LA Times. I mean, this guy, for me, really fits the mold of a Manchurian programmee. Tell me if you think I'm wrong.
No, I think that's very likely. And of course, we have this fact that the immediate reports said that there were 3 individuals. That was later reduced to 2, and then they claimed that one of them was just a taxi driver, so he didn't count. So then it went down to 1, and that's the guy that you're left with. I would recommend the following: rather than looking at the details of the individual case, let's look at this pattern that we've had in the first 2 weeks of the new year, because the pattern, once you've established that really has objective reality beyond all the little details of each one of them. On December 31st, we had a guy by the name of Walker, who was found in a dumpster in a landfill in Delaware near Wilmington, and it turns out that this is somebody who was a top advisor to the Secretary of the Air Force and the Air Force Chief of Staff.
The head of Amtrak on the East Coast, the head of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the head of the Vietnam Veteran Fund. This guy was super high-powered behind the scenes.
Right, but I think, among other things, the relevancy is that he was involved in the Air Force chain of command at the time that we had the hijacking of the rogue B-52. Remember, in late August, September 2007, a fully loaded B-52 intercontinental bomber with 6 nuclear-tipped cruise missiles on board was essentially hijacked by the rogue network, by the group speaking at that time through Cheney, now having other spokespersons, we would have to assume, and that was essentially taken to Barksdale, Louisiana from North Dakota, ready to go to the Middle East, and then stopped on the runway. So
and he was admittedly the top servant of Bush and Cheney going back to the previous administration. I mean, this was their go-to guy.
It's a very important thing. And then of course, we have the, I don't know if I have the order exactly right, but then you have the there was about to be a big merger, and then the head person over the merger burned up in her car in her front yard. That's right. This is the Ashley Turton case. Now, this lady was a lobbyist, but she was married to a top official of the Obama White House, and his function was to be the liaison of the Obama White House with the House of Representatives. So this chills that entire scene, right? It's very, very mysterious because she's backing her BMW out of her garage on Capitol Hill, and the car starts burning. And the police come up with lame stories about, well, this must have been a low-speed collision with inflammable material.
Well, I've seen the photo. It's clearly an incendiary car bomb. They blew her. The car's just completely destroyed. They murdered her.
That's the strong.
What are they going to do? Blow my car up, and then they say it just caught on fire? That's like saying Benazir Bhutto hit her head.
Right. So there's a death. Now that goes together with the death of the congressional aide and the shooting of the congresswoman in
Arizona days before, the former head guy for the Senate, who the head staffer of the Arizona Senate, he gets killed execution style. There's a bunch of these deaths going on. What's happening?
Well, there's more. We also have here in Maryland, we have a series of incendiary letters delivered to Governor Martin O'Malley and also to the head of the Department of Transportation.
Mr. Napolitano got one.
The state of Maryland. Now, you look at O'Malley. What is notable about O'Malley? A number of things. I mean, he's one of the few Democratic governors who did a really good election victory in getting himself a second term. But this is somebody who had taken the lead in attacking fraud closures. He had written a letter to the Maryland State Judiciary saying, I want you to slow down on these fraud closures by zombie bankers against our citizens until we're sure that the paperwork is absolutely impeccable, that there's no fraud, there are no robo-signers, no perjury in the documents, no dead people signing the complaint, and all the rest of this stuff as we've seen. So there's then that one. Then I would also look at Tom the Hammer DeLay. It's certainly a little bit of a draconian sentence for him comparatively to what he was, right? Normally, once you're the majority leader in the House, you're not going to be subjected to this kind of treatment in the oligarchical system that we have. But the peripeteia, as the Greeks would have put it, right? The fall of DeLay from essentially the legislative dictator of Capitol Hill for 2 or 3 years down to now being somebody on his way to jail, right? So they give him 3 years in jail. They say, you're going to jail immediately, go directly to jail, they're not past go, and we've got another 5-year sentence, we're going to hold that over your head, and otherwise we're going to give you 10 years of community service. So I think this was also calculated to send a message. In other words, when you put DeLay in jail, you're saying to Boehner and Cantor and the rest of these Republicans who are coming in, essentially, watch out, boys, because we can put any of you in jail. And I think the basic idea of all of these incidents, right, being it the Walker, the Maryland, the Turton, the Tucson, the DeLay, I think it's 5 or 6 of these cases, you can see that there's an attempt to discipline, first of all, the 100 or so new congresspersons coming to town. A lot of these are Republicans.
Yeah, they're trying to scare them. But, I mean, look at the Walker guy. This top advisor, he's running around disheveled without a shoe for 2 days. Then he's found dead, murdered, dumped in a landfill. He's found in a trash can that's then put in a garbage truck and taken and dumped. And then the police announced he was planting bombs at his neighbor's house. So they're also discrediting the dead man. I mean, obviously, this is a message. The day that the big merger's happening that she's involved in, her car blows up. I mean, is this the beginning of Night of the Long Knives or something?
No, it's simply the disciplining of these people. In other words, they've all got to be reminded who is boss. Now, the program of the Rogue Network is essentially the George Shultz program. It's tax cuts for the rich, gut domestic discretionary spending, starting with unemployment benefits, cut and gut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, destroy the social safety net, and complete deregulation. They also want to have the debt limit passed. They want these Tea Party people to shut up, basically. And there's a complicated issue because in many ways it is a disaster to try to not raise the debt limit. But the Wall Street people want it done their way. So what they're saying is we're now going to have the Obama State of the Union, right, within 10 days. It's widely assumed that Obama will do one of two things. He will either start the general assault on Social Security, attempting to strip the American people of one of their most basic economic rights. That's one possible trip for Obama. In other words, let's have a centrist coalition under the aegis of Obama. And now that we've demonized the left extreme and the right extreme, everybody's got to huddle together in the center and take part in this centrist coalition, and the program of that is destroy Social Security. Or, if that's not feasible or doesn't cut the mustard, then there's also the idea of tax reform. And what they mean by tax reform, I think, is very likely to be this 23-24% national sales tax, right? Value-added tax.
Which they've turned into some type of sugar goodie for conservatives. It's going to be on top of the income tax. They're just going to rename it the Social Security tax. Folks, you do not want this. No. And by the way, the Bush aide was John Wheeler. I don't know why we got the name wrong. But again, they're admitting that was a murder, but then mixing in some other things. Please continue, Webster.
Well, that I think is the pattern. So you get the idea that they're saying you're not allowed to be an extremist of the left or the right. You've got to essentially go with the immediate mainstream.
And that was the message signaling the new Congress was, and Republican senators, yes, the shooting, we must all lower our tone. The American people need to not be upset and sit down and shut up. It is all your guilt collectively, regardless of who was behind this. It's now time to crack down on free speech, talk radio, internet IDs. It's now time to do this for the good of America.
Right, and of course it's the national interest that they're putting forward is no national interest at all, but purely a Wall Street interest. So that's the moment. Now, obviously, this can't last. I mean, the kind of consensus that you can jury rig with these various terror events and judicial intimidation and other things, that won't last. But they don't need it to last. All they need to do is to ram through a series of things in the next 3-4 months. Again, I think cutting of Social Security is probably their main target, but they would also accept this other, the other version, right, which would be the value-added tax. So that's what I see behind this pattern, and it's unfortunate that people have learned very little, right? When these events occur, you cannot begin sociological analysis of what it means as if these were spontaneous events, because they are not. These are orchestrated events, right? We don't know where the shrink is in Lochner's life, right? The mental health professional.
Yeah, stay there. I also want to get into Tunisia. We're going to go into overdrive. I got some other important news.